In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this responsive LED banner. And by responsive, here's what I mean. I can actually change the name of team A to something like Cubs. Notice everything shifts. We have equal spacing between all of them. I can change this to something like Wildcats. And again, everything will shift. Now, keep in mind, we do have like 3 separate text layers kind of grouped here together. We also have 3 separate text layers grouped here together. And yet somehow they all work well together to where they give us equal spacing. I mean, I can actually change the size of this, I can change the size of that, and it will kind of push everything together. So that's really nice. And let's keep going. So let's say I wanted to change this from tomorrow to today, and you can easily do that. It will shift everything. You can change 7 o'clock to something like 7:30. Or you can completely get rid of this text. So if you get rid of it, it will shift everything. If you can get rid of that, it will shift everything. And you can even change this to something like maybe next. You can also change the size of it. So the sky is the limit what you can do with this. And I will throw in a little disclaimer. I will be using 2 tools that I created. One of them is Smart Size 2.0. It's a new tool that just released today. So I'll definitely be showing you everything you can do. And then also we'll be using this Smart Anchor. So without any further ado, let's dive right in. Before we go any further, I definitely want to hit pause and talk about Smart Size. What is Smart Size? Well, as you can see, here's what it looks like. It's a tool that I created, and you can think of it as a reference tool. That's all that is. It doesn't really do anything to your layer other than give you a very important information about your layer. And the information that it gives you is the width and the height of your layer. That's all that is. So, but obviously it has way more features, and we'll talk about that. But before we do that, let me quickly explain what we're working with here. So we have a composition here. We have a null layer, which is just a null layer. You won't see that in the final render, but we can parent things to it. And then we have children here. So this is the parent, and then we have text layer right here. Then we have the image and the smart rect. It's a shape layer. Basically, it is positioned at the root of the null layer, and it kind of extrudes to the right and to the bottom here. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working with. And keep in mind the origin of all of these. Like for example, text layer here, if I hit P to reveal the position, the origin, if I set X to 0 and Y to 0, it's going to go to the root of our parent. So just so you know. Now, if nothing is parented, the origin is top left corner of your composition. Okay, so let's talk about Smart Size. Well, it is a reference tool, so it gives you the size of your layer. So for example, if I select both of these, and if I don't do anything here, if I just click on Run button, notice this layer has a new pseudo effect called Smart Size, and it gives us the width and the height, and everything else is extra. So the width and the height, that's what the value of it here, the width and the height, and both of them are in pixel value. So for example, if I increase the size of this, notice it'll change like that. So I can do this. I can press Control Alt F, and then it will make it basically the size of our composition, which is 1920 by 1080. So this thing is pretty accurate. All right, so let's keep going here. So I'm going to select both of them. We're going to delete. So then we have tabs in here. We have 3 of them. First one is size. We have some size options. We have 2 buttons that we'll talk about here. By default, it's set to layer width, but then we have another button called layer position and width, and then layer position and height. So we'll talk about those 2 later. Then we have another tab, and this one is code. And this right here allows you to create an expression quickly. So we'll talk about that as well. And then the last one here has to do with the size that you're getting. So if you want to get the size of this layer, now where do you want to get it? Because size does change in your timeline because things animate. So sometimes, for example, right here, this could be animated and it's a different size, but then over here, it can be that size. So it is important where you're referencing the size from. And that's what this does. By default, it's set to time indicator, wherever your time indicator is, wherever that shape, however that shape looks, that's what it's going to give you. But if you set it to things like the beginning of the layer, so it's going to give you the size only whatever it is at the beginning of the layer. If it's animated, it's going to ignore everything else. It will only point to the beginning. Then you have the same thing for middle, the same thing for end. And a lot of times you have animation at the beginning and the end, but in the middle it's static. And so that's why this middle is there. I use this all the time because you want to reference the size of it when it's finished animating. So a lot of times it animates at the beginning and end, and then it's exactly what you need in the middle. So I usually go with that, but then you have time, you have custom time. So that's what that's for. Okay, I'm going to set it to the middle, and then we're going to go to size here. So we're going to leave it as is. So let's do this. Let's apply size to both of these. We're going to select them, apply, and we're going to change the size of this rectangle here based on the size of this image. So we're going to tell this rectangle to be the same size as this image. And it's very easy to do because we do have the proper width and the height. So we're going to select this image and we're going to lock this in here in the effect control. So this is the width and the height of our image. So then I'm going to go to the X and Y size of our rectangle, and we're going to pick whip to the width and then height to height. And just like that, this thing is the exact same height as our image. Now we can increase the size and it will work just fine. So that's how we do it, very easy. So let's do the same thing for this text. We can select this, unlock, and then lock this in. So that's what we're gonna reference. And from the Smart Rect, we're gonna go and link up the X to width and Y to height. And just like that, this text is rigged up. We can type on it and it will be responsive. So yeah, super, super awesome. Not only that, you can actually increase the size and it will go with it as well. All right, so that's like the quick explanation. Now, obviously we have some advanced skills here as well. Like for example, Smart Size does have these two. And the way it works, it's kind of hard to understand a bit, but once it clicks, it's very powerful. So for example, I'm gonna delete the code here. So if you set it to size for width and height, it will only give you the layer size. Now, if you set it to layer position and size for both of these, the width and the height, it will basically reference the root level. So if it's parented to a layer, it's going to reference the root position of your parent layer. But if it's not parented, it's going to reference the root of your composition. So for example, instead of giving you just the width, it's going to start at the root and it's going to give you the position and the width. So the size will be like this, from here to there, okay, on the width. And on the height, the same thing, wherever the root is. So it's going to start at the root. It's going to add the root position up to top corner and then the height. And remember, it always referencing the top left corner of your layer. So top left, and notice the root is always usually at top left in After Effects. So I try to stay consistent. So again, this right here takes the width or the position of your layer, starting at the root to where it's at, and then it adds the width. And the same thing with the height, starting at the root, it gives you the position to the top of your layer, and then it adds the height of it, and that's the size basically. So how is that useful? Well, let me show you how. So we're gonna reapply. So we're gonna select both of these layers and we're gonna select both of them and we're gonna hit apply. Notice this display with height will change based on these two. So I'm gonna run it, boom, just like that. You'll see it in here. So you can do it in here or in there. The same thing for size based on. So right now it's set to layer midpoint, but again, you can do it in here, change it to current time maybe. If you run it, it's gonna say current time. Let's do middle. So that's where you do it. And once you applied it, you can still make changes there. So we set it to both the position and width and position and height on both of them. So notice the value has changed now, it's much bigger. So let's do this. So now, for example, if we do the same thing, we're gonna select the image and we're gonna go to the Effect Controls panel, unlock, lock it back in. So we have the width and the height of this image. And we're gonna pick whip X size of our shape layer to the width and then the Y size of it to the height. And just like that, notice it took this basically starting at the root, it took the position and the width of our shape layer, and then it took the position of the height here at the root to the layer here and the width. And so now we can do this. I mean, this comes in very handy. You can increase the size. I mean, this definitely comes in handy. You can do the same thing for other layers. Now, the cool thing about this, you can bring in multiple layers. So once you rig like this, you can use this code portion of this script. And this can be a bit complicated, but let me kind of unpack it for you. So what you see at the root here, we have two buttons here. And you can think of them as like containers. This is a container that's gonna hold different variables or different sizes. So we have like first one is called size. If you hover over it says size list. So it's like a list. And then this is spacing list. So the way I kind of separate the two, anything to do with size, like the width, the height, I usually put it in here. But anything to do with the like spacing, like sliders, I just put it in here, like the position. And the reason why you want to separate the two, because sometimes you want to grab like multiple widths and then you want to grab like the maximum value out of the two or out of the three, out of the four. So once you kind of put things in containers, then you have options in here. So maybe for this one, I want to grab the minimum value, the maximum value, whatever's in the list. So whatever's in the list, out of the list, we want to grab the minimum value, the maximum, or we can add them together. So I'm going to grab the maximum value out of the list. And then for the like maybe spacing, you put something in the spacing, and maybe in here you want to grab the minimum value or maybe the maximum value. So when you switch, you can see it will give you different setting based on what you set that list to be. And I know I'm explaining a lot here, but watch how useful this is. So for example, we're going to select both of these layers. They already have smart size applied, right? And while I have them selected, I'm going to press Control F, which will take you over here. And we're going to search for smart size. And as you can see, it gives us the width and the height of selected layers. So once I selected all of those properties, I can hit S twice to solo it. So now we have the width and the height of each layer. So here's what I can do. I can select the width of our layer, text layer here, and then Control select the width of our image. So I have both of them selected, and then I can put it into this list here, into this container. And I can just add it into it like this. Plus, boom, it went to 2 from 0 to 2. So both of these sizes are in that container. And once they are in that container, I can say, hey, give me the largest value out of the two. And like, give me the largest width from here to here, or from there. So it's going to go with that one because it's the largest, because it goes further, right? So the largest value out of the two. So once I kind of set everything up, next what I can do, I can go over here to Smart Rect, and we're going to press E to reveal the effects. And I'm going to select both of these and then hit S twice to solo it. So I'm going to delete the expression on that. So I'm going to go to the X size. So I grab the width of the text and the width of the image, and I'm going to select this property. So right now we have it loaded in there. We want the maximum value. I know I'm over explaining, but then I can just apply it to that selected property like this. Boom, and it's applied. So now I can select this and it will go with the largest value. So that's perfect. I can do the same thing for the height. So I can take this list, select this list of sizes and reset it. And then we're going to select the same thing for height. I'm going to select height of our image, height of our text, and then load it into that list. We're going to take the maximum value, and then we're going to apply it to the Y size, and then we're going to apply the code like this, boom. And just like that, we have something very interesting. As you can see, whichever one we go with, it goes with that. But not only that, I mean, we can increase the size, right? We can increase the size, things will go. But if I delete this text like this, boom, it will automatically snap to this one. So it's super handy, and you'll see that in this tutorial. Smart Anchor is another tool that we'll be using in this tutorial, so I definitely want to talk about it as well. So what is Smart Anchor? As you can see, here's what it looks like. But essentially, Smart Anchor is a layer anchor tool, and each layer has an anchor point. And the thing about this, sometimes you want to change multiple anchor points for multiple layers at the same time. And you can't really do that. It doesn't allow you to do that. So you have to do it one individually. But that's where Smart Anchor comes in very handy. If you don't have the code enabled, then you can say, hey, anchor points of each selected layer, go to the top right corner by clicking on top right. You can say bottom right, bottom left, and so on, middle. So you can quickly do that. And it will just position it there, but that's all it's going to do. But there are times, for example, when I want to maybe grab this text layer, position it right here, and I want the anchor point to be kind of locked in there. So naturally you think, hey, bottom right corner. But when I type things, notice the anchor point stays there, but it doesn't really like lock in my text. So that can be a nightmare when you rig things using expressions. So sometimes you want to lock in your anchor point at the bottom right corner, and you want for the whole text to be locked in there. When you type something, you want for it to extrude out of that. When you size it, you want for it to extrude out of that as well. So that's where the code mode comes in handy. So you go to Smart Anchor, you want to make sure you enable code mode, you select the layer, and then you click on this bottom right corner, and now it'll do the same thing, but this time you have the pseudo effect, and it is locked in. So it doesn't matter what you type, notice it's going to only come out of that. But not only that, you can also do this. You can select the layer, you can adjust the size, and it will only do it from that point. So it's locked in. So that's where this Smart Anchor comes in very handy, and we'll use more of that in this tutorial. So let's talk about what it is we're rigging here. So the first thing we want to do is define the active area. So this is the area where we're going to basically put everything in. So everything lives within this active area. In fact, I'm going to call this area, let's call it something like variable A. Okay, and then we're going to subtract something from it. And what we're going to subtract essentially will be this. So we're going to put in parentheses. It's going to be this size right here. So this right here, that's what we're going to subtract. And also this size right here. So the text of both of them, we're going to subtract from it. So we're going to say, let's call this one B1 and B2. So we're going to say B1 plus B2, we're gonna add them together, and then we're gonna subtract from A, which will give us C, which is the spacing here. So that's what it's gonna give us, the spacing, but it's gonna give it to us all combined. And so to separate it, we're gonna have to take C and we're gonna divide by 3. And it will give us D, which is individual spacing. So that's gonna be D, D, and D. All right, so let's get to rigging. And for this example, this is what we're gonna be working with. Nothing is rigged, nothing is animated, it's all static. So let me kind of show you what we have here. We have 2 logos on each side. We have Team A versus text and Team B right here. We also have them in our timeline right there. And also we have tomorrow and time zone. So day, time, and time zone right here on this side. And again, nothing is rigged. So let's get going. We're gonna define our active area. So this is gonna be our active area. And I'm gonna determine a new origin. And new origin is gonna be top left corner here. That's where 0 is gonna be. Because right now, if I select this text and press P, and if I hit 0, it's gonna go to basically to this composition. So I wanna determine 0 of our new active area. So we're gonna bring in a new shape layer, and basically new shape layer, it's like a null object because it's an empty container. And I'm gonna call it controls. And this is gonna be our new origin. So I'm gonna position it right here. So top left corner is our new origin. And I'm gonna actually duplicate it and I'm gonna put it underneath here. We're gonna call this one end. And watch this, if I hit P to reveal a position, that's the position of it here. But as soon as I parent it to that controls, the position changes to 0, 0 because that's the new origin. So I'm gonna position it to the very end here. So that's basically from here to there. So from 0 to that, this position X gives us the width of our active area, which this value will come in very handy. So now we have the width of our active area, which is a number we can work with. Remember, we're gonna subtract both of these from this value. That's gonna be later down the road. Next thing I wanna do, I'm gonna grab all of these text layers and I'm gonna go to Smart Anchor. We're gonna go and determine basically to grab the anchor based on the middle point of each selected layer. And I'm gonna tell the anchor point to go to the top left of each layer. So like this, boom. And I wanna make sure that the code is applied too. So just like that. So that's done. Then the next thing I would do is apply smart size. So I'm gonna go smart size. And while we're at it, let's make sure it's set to middle. And we're gonna apply the second. So we're gonna get the position. So it's gonna be the position and the size, right? So we're gonna do that for the width and the height. It doesn't really matter. I'm actually gonna disable the height anyway, because we're only gonna be doing width. So next I'm gonna apply it to those selected layers like this. And while we have them selected, I'm gonna press Control F. We're gonna search for smart size. And there they are. And I'm actually, for each one, height right here, I'm gonna disable expression. And I'm gonna hide it, Control Alt Shift, and then click. When you click on it, it goes away. And the reason why I'm disabling height, because anytime you have, the more expressions you have in your composition, it basically lags your composition. And if I'm not using height, I don't really need it. So I'm gonna disable it and just hide it. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna do, because we're only interested in the width. So that's good. So yeah, that's all I need right now. So we have the smart size applied. So we have the size of all of them. And now I'm gonna create controls for each layer so we can kind of group them. So we're gonna create null objects or null layers for each group. So for this one, we're gonna right click new, and we're gonna bring in a new shape layer. We're gonna call it text controls. Or actually, this is gonna be matchup. So let's call it matchup. And we're gonna change the color to the same color as well. And we're gonna do this. We're gonna select this because it's way out here right now. And I wanna basically snap it to that, to this first origin here. So I'm gonna select this and hold down Shift and then parent. When you hold it down, it will basically snap it to that layer origin, which is super handy. And then you just unparent it and parent all of them to that. So now this is the origin of that, and we can kind of move it together so they're grouped nicely. So perfect. Now we'll do the same thing for that one as well. So again, right click, let's bring in a new shape layer. We're gonna call this one text controls, and we're gonna change it to yellow. And we're gonna do the same thing, hold Shift and then parent to the day, and it's gonna snap it right there, and then unparent, and we're going to select the other and parent it to that control. And essentially we have both of them grouped here. They're both moving. And while I have them selected, I'm going to parent them to the controls, because now we have the new origin here. So this right here, like this one right here, if I hit P and if I set the X to 0, it's going to go to our new origin here, which is perfect. And the same for the group for this text here as well, the text controls. If I set it to 0 on X, it's going to go to this origin. So it's perfect. All right, so we have pretty much everything rigged. Now we need to determine the size of all three of these, and the same thing for that, because we want to grab the size of one, the size of the other, and then subtract it from the active area. So that's what we're going to do. So let's get the size of these three first, and to do that is very simple. We're just going to select them, press Control F to go to the search. We're going to search for Smart Size, and we're going to select the width of all of them. Hit S twice to solo it. And then while I have them selected, we're going to go to the expression portion of our size, Smart Size. And we have two containers. So we're going to go to the size container. We're going to load the size into that container by clicking on this plus while I have them selected. As you can see, it shows me that there are three of them in there. Perfect. And then what do I want to do with them? So since we are grabbing, like it's considering the position. So team A is going to be this width. Then versus text, it starts the right here origin position of that, and it gives me that one. So basically I just want the largest value. So 1, 2, and 3, I want to just give me the largest value out of all of those three. And next I'm going to select matchup controls. And if I don't have a property selected, and if I hit apply, it creates a slider with all of those selected properties. So I'm going to double click here to show you what I'm talking about. So right here, this slider, it has this expression. So basically this generates an expression. It takes our selection, size 1, 2, and 3, which is team A versus and team B width. So that's what they are. And then in the final, right here, the final size variable, it's taken all three of them and it's using this math max to kind of give us the maximum value out of the three. And that's what it calls up, this variable. So essentially, out of these three text layers, it gives us the largest one, which is the width of this whole area here. All right, so then we're going to do the same thing for that one. We're going to basically load all of them as well. So let's do this real quick. We're going to select both of them and Control F to search for Smart Size. And we're going to select the width of each. And we're going to solo it, hit S twice. And then we're going to reset the list here. We're going to pull both of them in. So we're going to add them to the list, this size list. Three of them are loaded. We want the largest value. So this is the minimum, the largest, and then add them all together. So we're going to want the largest value. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to text controls. We're going to apply it. We're going to call this one, by the way, we're going to call it text width. And the other one we're going to call, we don't want to not name it. So we're going to call this one matchup width. So we have the matchup width here, we have the text width here. Okay, so we're almost there. Now, next what I want to do, I want to rig our text, because right now if I change this text, you can see it doesn't really shift anything. So we need to kind of tell each text to acknowledge the text before it. Like this one needs to know the width of that one and apply it to the position X. And this one needs to know the width of both of these and so on. So let's do that real quick. So we're going to start with this one. We're going to grab the size of this. So I'm going to press E to see our effects. And basically I want the width. That's what I want. And I'm going to load it up into our size. So I'm going to reset the size here and just bring it in. It doesn't really matter, just one size. So then I'm going to select this V, hit P to reveal the position. And we're going to separate the dimensions and we're going to apply it to the X. So we're going to select this and we're going to apply this expression. And as you can see right here, it gives us the size basically of this A, and then it applies it. And essentially that's why it's right over here to the end of this team A text. So that's good, but we do want to give it some option. I want to be able to move this text. So to do that, I'm going to go to the end of the size and I'm going to add something to it. I'm going to say, hey, by the way, we also want to add this. We want to do this property, which is this current property, but we want the value. We're going to say value. Okay, then when I click away, it kind of shifts. We're going to zero this out. So when you zero it out, it goes to the beginning here. And then in here, we can kind of position it where we want it. So something like that is good. So that one is set up. So now I can change this. The V will definitely follow it. So let me undo that. Now we're going to do the same thing for team B. And so to do that, we're going to select both of these, the V and the team A, and we're going to search for smart size. And we're going to grab both width of those. So we're going to go to smart size. We're going to load, let me reset everything, load size into here. So we're going to add to the list. So you can see two of them are there. And we want the largest value out of the two. So we want the largest one. And then we're going to go and do this. So we're going to go to the team B position. We're going to press P to reveal the position. We're going to separate, and we're going to apply this expression to the X like this, and it's going to be glued to this V. But the cool thing about this, I mean, you can move on this V, everything's working, but we do want to give it some space here. So we're going to select this, and we're going to go to the position here. And the same concept, so we have size 1, size 2, basically team A and versus width. And then we're grabbing the maximum value out of the two, but we're going to add on to it. We're going to say plus, and we're going to add, again, this property, and we want the value. Basically, the value of this property, we're going to set it to 0, and it's going to still attach it. And then we're going to kind of position it. I'm not sure what we've done to this one. Let's kind of stay consistent. So let's see what we've done for that one. I think we did like, let's do 25 maybe, and let's do 25 here as well. So something like that is good. All right, so we have it rigged. Now I can, again, change this. I can change that. I can type anything I want here, and it will adjust. We have this rigged up this side. Now we need to do the same thing on the other side right here. So let me do that here. So let's start with the time here. So we wanted to adjust based on what we type here. And we're just going to select day, and we're going to, again, press Control F. We're going to search for smart size. We're going to select the width. So we want the width of this text. We're going to go to smart size. We're going to reset this, and we're going to add this in. Doesn't really matter what I use because it's just one text or one size. And then we're going to go to the position of our time and press P, and we're going to separate the dimensions. We're going to hide Y. We're going to select the X position, and we're going to apply it. So then I'm going to set it to 0. It's going to go and start touching this. And I think 25 is what we set it to. So something like that, 25. Well, oh, we typed 25, but we need to go over here and tell it to grab the value. So we're going to go to the end of it here. We're going to say plus this property, and we want the value, and which is 25. And so it gives us a nice spacing here, which is perfect. So next we need to do the same thing. So now I can adjust this. It will move. We can type anything we want. It's working. So now we're going to do the same thing here. So now we're going to reveal the size of both the day and the time. So while I have both of them selected, I'm going to press Control F. We're going to search for smart size, and we're going to select the width of both of them, hit S twice to solo it. We're going to go back to smart size, and we're going to reset this list. We're going to add it to that list. And this time we want the maximum value. So we're going to use the maximum value, and then we're going to go to the position of this time zone, press P to reveal the position, and we're going to separate the dimensions. Again, it's very repetitive. You'll definitely get the gist after doing it once. So then we're going to apply that expression. As you can see, it's touching. We're going to set 25 here, and we're going to do the same thing here. Actually, let me hide this real quick. We're going to set right here final size. We're going to go to the end of it, and we're going to add something to it. And again, it's the same concept, this property, and we want the value, which is this value, what we typed. And just like that, maybe 25 is a bit too much, maybe 10. Yeah, that's probably good. So now everything's rigged. As you can see, everything's moving, and this is moving as well. The only thing we have left to do is to basically grab the size of this one and that one, and we're going to add it together, and we're going to subtract it from the active size, and that will give us spacing. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to controls here. We're going to add, well, actually, before we do that, let's do this. Let's just use the size here as well. So we're going to select both of these, press E to reveal the effects, and we're going to select the size sliders right here, hit S twice to solo it. So we have the size of this right here. This is match up with size in pixel value, and then we have the size of the text. Here it is. So I'm gonna load both of them up. So I have both of them selected. We're gonna go over here, reset everything. We're gonna add it in, but this time we wanna basically get the sum of it. We wanna add both of them. We don't wanna get the largest value out of the two. We want to add both of them together. So that's why we have the sum icon selected. And then we need to do this. So I'm just gonna go to right here, Control select this, and we're gonna hit apply. And remember, when you do that, it's gonna create a slider with your expression. So we're gonna change the name of it to spacing because that's gonna give us the spacing, but we need to do some adjustments. So we're gonna double click here to go into it. We're gonna select it, hit S twice to solo it. We can go ahead and hide this. So in here, here's what we have. We have size 1, and as you can see, it's basically this text right here. So it's text size 1, matchup text is size 2, and it adds them both together in final size. But so we have the final size, but then I want to add another variable. We're going to call it constant, and it's going to be the active area width. That's what I'm calling basically the width, the entire thing. And remember, it's actually the position. Don't worry about the expression breaking because we're not done yet. So it's actually this value. So we're going to go over here and grab this value. That's what we want. And next, we're going to take this active area width. We're going to put it before here because it's larger, and we're going to subtract something from it. So we're going to subtract final size, which will give us spacing. But then we want to take, basically it gives us all of them combined. So what we want to do, we have 3 spacings. So we want to put this value in parentheses, and then we're going to take the outcome of this and divide it by 3 spaces that we have, which will give us 1 individual spacing. So that's exactly what it does. So now we have this spacing and we can do something with it. So for example, we can select this right here, matchup controls. We're going to press P on our keyboard to reveal the position. We're going to separate our dimensions. We're going to get rid of the Y. So now we have this X position, and I can just link it up to the slider of the spacing. And so it's going to give that spacing here. And we can actually go here and be more proper here. We can refer the value. I like doing that. So now we have right here, this one is rigged. So then we want to take the spacing. We want to grab the spacing, the size, and this spacing, and then add it to the position of this. So to do that, we're going to use this as well. So we're going to reset everything, and we're going to do this. So let's select the spacing. We're going to load it into the spacing list. So let's load that in. And then we're going to grab the size of this, which is right here. So we're going to select this, press E to reveal the effects. We're going to select the slider, so it's matchup width. So it is the size. I'm going to put it in the size list. So I'm going to select the list, and then we're going to add that in there. And then we're going to go back to spacing because we're going to add 1 more spacing. So we're kind of like building a math equation here. So we're going to select the spacing again, and we're going to add it into the spacing, and we want to add it together. So we want to make sure because we're adding this plus that plus this. So we have 3 things loaded in there. And the reason why I do the whole spacing and size, it's so much easier to keep in track, like what size. Sometimes you want to grab like the size, like the largest size, and you want to add spacing together. And so, but in this case, we're adding all of them together. But sometimes you don't do that. So anyway, okay, so we have 2 things loaded. Obviously, we have 2 spacing, 1 size. And so now what I want to do, I'm going to go to this tomorrow, but we're going to go to this text controls, right? The one that grabs the whole thing. We're going to press P to reveal the position. We're going to separate the dimensions, and we're going to apply this expression to the X position. So we're going to select this, and we're going to apply it. And just like that, it fixed it. So now we can move on this. You'll see everything will shift correctly. As you can see, the same spacing everywhere else. You can change this to Cubs, right? And then you can go to this one here and change it to Wildcats. And what else? Now we can change this tomorrow to today, and it will shift. We can add 7:30 to this. We can even maybe get rid of the text. So when you get rid of it, things will shift. When you get rid of the time. Now, when I say get rid of it, I don't mean like to delete it from the timeline. I mean, get rid of the text. And so as you can see, everything shifts. Maybe you want to say next. Definitely the sky's the limit what you can do with this. I'm going to undo this. I actually recently used Smart Size for a gig I did for Fox Sports just to test it to make sure everything is working correctly before I release it. And I had to create something very similar to what you see here. I had to rig a ticker flow. And if you don't know what that is, a ticker flow essentially is the same thing that you see here, but it's usually at the bottom of the screen as you watch sports. It kind of tells you the matchups that are coming up, when, and it's very similar. So I had to use Smart Size, and man, it saved me so much time. So I was definitely glad I had it. Thank you so much for watching this. Thank you so much for getting our tools. We really appreciate it. I hope you found this tutorial useful. But in the meantime, my name is Sergey Prakhnevsky, and this is ucramedia.com.